Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And we are back after our break. I'm going to hand over to Akil to introduce our next guest, that is Dr. Naeem Vallee, and the topic that is going to ensue. And after that will be a competition, so stay tuned for that as well. And this comes just after having wrapped up a discussion around Paul's ice cream. Akil, over to you.
All right, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh once again, and welcome to, I suppose, a new weekly segment to the show, and something I've really been looking forward to. And I think it's really interesting that we've been chatting earlier about an emotional response to a tweet placed by a company, right? Um, and these are the sorts of events which happen daily in our lives, and I think that they're starting to become amplified because of the way we interact with each other and the way we interact with social media. And often what that does is it contributes to the immense amount of stress, to the kind of, mental health disorders, the anxiety, that sense of perpetual angst which we tend to have. And so if you have to look at the way our lives tend to go, often it's reaction. It's, I get cut off in traffic, I get angry. I get to the workplace, my coffee is not hot enough. It's um, we're in this constant state of reacting either positively or negatively to the emotional stimuli around us. And the real question is there a better way to do that? And so that's where I came across in my own research and reading, came across this idea of concept of stoicism. Um, and to chat to us a little bit about this, we have Dr. Naeem Vallee. Now, obviously, Dr. Vallee is an intern, medical intern at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, which undeniably has to be one of the most stressful jobs in one of the most stressful places you can ask for. And I want to chat to him a little bit about stoicism, his understanding of it, and more importantly, how he applies it in his daily life, and what the value of that kind of philosophy is. So, Naeem, assalamu alaikum. Lovely to have you on.
Wow, wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for having me.
Lovely to be chatting to you. So let's start right at the beginning, right? What is stoicism?
Sure. Okay, well, Stoicism is one of what we can consider a sort of ancient philosophy that was started in around perhaps 350 BC. It was sort of started by a man named Zeno of Cyprus and really was pioneered by a few great and brilliant leaders who took on and learned from the school of thought and really encapsulated it and made it their own. A few notable Stoics are, say, Marcus Aurelius, um, Seneca, Epictetus. These are all ancient Romans who learned and grew up in Stoicism. Really, what it is it's a philosophy and an outlook or a life outlook that tries to put things more simply into perspective. So it has four major facets which are important to its and like important to its structure. So the four main facets of Stoicism and what it really truly is about, and not just the word that we know it, which is to be called a Stoic is to remain calm under immense pressure, and that gives a good like sort of insight into what Stoicism is. But Stoicism truly is based on these four principles, which is practical knowledge, courage, prudent self-control, and justice. And all four of those in tandem work in such a way to help one create a better headspace and to navigate their normal day-to-day stresses in the most structured and logical manner. It's an all-encompassing, not sort of like belief system, but it's a way to navigate and deal with, being alive.
Okay, absolutely. And so, I mean, as you've kind of discussed, this ancient philosophy. When you compare it to the world we live in, which is immensely fast-paced, um,
Mm-hmm.
where we're constantly bombarded by stimuli, both good and bad. Do you think that one, stoicism is useful in the world we live in today, but more importantly, do you think that it's actually practicable? Can I take this philosophy, which supposedly is supposed to keep me calm, and help me mentally navigate the stimuli, both positive and negative, happening around me? when I'm being bombarded with so many stimuli.
Sure, and I think it, the formal schools of thought of Stoicism have obviously fallen out of favor and have fallen out of practice. However, the principles of what Stoicism is about and is so applicable in today's society. We, as you said, are bombarded with a slew and host and myriad of information or stresses, external pressures every day. What Stoicism allows you to do is to allow yourself to identify what's truly in your control and what are things that we can sort of do about it. So Stoicism emphasizes having immense self-control over your own actions, over your own emotions, and knowing that everything around you can be, whatever happens around you is out of your control. And what you truly can control are your actions and reactions to the situation. For example, I mean, in a world of full suffering, and we can consider this quite a stressful world, Epictetus, one of the great Stoics, once said that human suffering is not a product of our circumstance, but it's more of a product of how we deal with that circumstance. So truly, we do live in a stressful world, but how we are able to navigate and deal with those stresses allow us to navigate those stresses better and or to navigate them in a way that mitigates stress to make it more tolerable. And that's what it is, just about keeping your head cool, knowing what you can do, and being in control of your own situation.
All right, absolutely. So, I mean, this all sounds wonderful in theory, to be able to not get ticked off when someone cuts you off in traffic, to not be stressed out, to have the sense of peace and calm and equanimity through, whatever it is. But how do we put this into practice?
Sure. So I think many people have spent a lifetime trying to figure that out. One of the ways that Marcus Aurelius did it was that he reflected and had these journals of basically his life experiences that never were supposed to be publicized, but after his death were read by his peers and written down and sort of distributed. And in that, we see that his journaling and own personal expression of thought allowed him to identify things that triggered him. So, for example, if he was, say, in traffic and he was cut off and was immensely angry, he'd reflect that evening about what was the thing, why did he get angry? And Stoicism like to identify that there's a natural chain of order in the world. They call that logos. There is a rational order. So if someone cuts you off, that's part of life. Your understanding of why you're getting angry is, oh, I could have been an accident. My car is valuable. My life is valuable. All of these things are sort of part of that process. And if you reflect and internalize and have introspection upon those points, those are the things that allow you to break down your own, in Stoicism, allow you to break down your own sort of perceptions and ideas and get to the gist of why you react in a specific manner. And then you can use that as a way to fervently self improve. And that's one of the bases of Stoicism too.
All right, absolutely. I suppose the final question is twofold. One is, again, it sounds wonderful to be able to be cut off and have this little 5-minute introspection period, but in a sense that goes against part of what is in our nature, which is to be reactionary, which is the minute that this thing happens, that's the point at which it is hardest to sit down and introspect. So how do we get to that point, firstly? And then secondly, what are the tools which you've used to kind of get to that point, and how does it apply to your own daily life?
So I think it's a difficult question, and I don't think I have the answer. I think if I did, would be either a very rich man or of one that is written about like Marcus Aurelius. So I think what we could do is perhaps use these sort of examples of people and their ideas and ideals. They understand and read into their reactions. I think that's part of Stoicism, is having someone as an idealistic mentor. And if you want to compare it to Islam, you can say that that could be the Sunnah. So we have the basis and understanding. How to get there, it's your own journey. And I think that's dealing with the stress, many people take a deep breath, take a 5 seconds, whatever they need to do. And there isn't a blanket thing or specific thing to do. It's just that when you're faced with that situation is to remain calm and to not be overwhelmed. That is difficult to navigate and necessarily execute if you want to not react and be upset. But I think practically you could, as I said, take a breath, have lots of practice. Just remember that there's a bigger picture in your reaction. So yes, it's normal to be upset, but is it normal to swear at someone for something small? And then the second question is, how did I get to it? Which is the same way that I got into Stoicism, was actually journaling and writing down all the things, trying to navigate my own thoughts. That was how I sort of figured it out and how I came across Stoicism. I was looking bullet journaling, etc., and a few other things, and that's how Stoicism came to be in my life and how I got interested in it. So, if you want to get into it, perhaps journaling may be the way forward.
Absolutely, that's lovely. I think it's been a fascinating conversation, and I think I've kind of ascribed to that philosophy and that manner of thinking for a while, and you realize that it tends to ebb and flow. Sometimes you succumb to whatever you're feeling at the time. Sometimes you manage to control it. I think the one thing which I found useful was kind of thinking about what's the worst thing which could happen after a situation. So let's say it is, you get to work and you realize that you're going to have to stay late that day, or you forgot your lunch. Well, what's the worst that happens? It's a little bit of time, or it's a bit of extra money spent on lunch. And I think when you start to process things cognitively in that way, realizing that in the grander scheme of things, a couple of hours in your day is not going to immensely impact your life. It helps you to kind of develop that sense of peace and calm and get that sense of equanimity. But to anyone out there who is interested in the philosophy, I would recommend reading the book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. You spoke about it. Very simple read. Oh, there we go. Very simple read, but very, very useful, and it helps. It kind of helps put all of this into context, and I also think it helps put your life into context. We're very egotistical creatures, and I think part of Stoicism is ridding yourself of that sense that I have some form of entitlement. Because I think that is often what drives whether we feel good or bad about ourselves in a moment. But that's been a fascinating conversation, and the start to, I'm not sure I like the name, but Motivation Monday on Jack Attack. And coming up after the break, we're going to be having a competition. Someone's going to win a lovely weekend away to Kwantu Game Reserve. So Naeem, Jazakallah, thanks so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Jazakallah, thank you for having me.